individual. The Borg at least knew they are part of the collective. These people are going to think they're individuals, but they're going to be being controlled. Kind of what's happening now with TV and commercials and stuff. We're being manipulated without realizing it.
Well, yeah, there was a recent ad. There was a recent Adidas ad that was all about, it was like women in sports. Except it was all about trans women in sports, you know.
Really?
And yeah.
Did it show any females?
It did show some, but like trans women was like a big part of it.
I want to
push.
We're gonna do like we have this interesting segue from this conversation into Ukraine, surprisingly, but I guess in this day and age, we have the story from Business Insider, how a transgender Ukrainian man escaped Russia's invasion. I painted my nails violet and wore mom's shirt to look more girly. We then have this story from TMZ. Transgender woman fighting 2 wars in Ukraine fears Russians and transphobic Ukrainians. So this is interesting because in the story about the trans woman in Ukraine because of the war, they announced if you were 16 to 60-year-old man, you could not leave the country. Legally in Ukraine, a trans woman is a man. Whatever your political opinion is on it, that's the view of the Ukrainian government. I do think it's funny that the left is just like totally on board with Ukraine. I get it, you know, the Russian invasion is a bad thing, but you got like Nazis there and it's like the government is transphobic, but whatever. So you have this story where this trans woman is like, you know, I'm a woman and I can't leave because of this rule. Then you have this other story about a trans man. So this person is born female, paints their nails and wears feminine clothing to be able to escape the country. To me, it's interesting. You know, I'm wondering, there have been a lot of males, who fled Ukraine as well as women and
Just
children.
like the Titanic.
Right. I mean, and I understand if someone's like, I don't want to fight in a war and they want to get out, but this is like your country is being invaded. The interesting thing to me is I understand these are 2 unique individuals and we're not talking about a group here, but it is fascinating. The 2 stories we get out of here are about a biological male and female, a trans man and a trans woman, both trying to flee the country and not stay and fight for it.
Yeah, I mean, the headline's interesting, isn't it? Fighting 2 wars. Actually, they're trying to not fight any.
Right. Right, exactly. Not the
so
gender war, not any of it.
We talked about Laya Thomas, I think is how it's pronounced. This is the biological male trans woman who's competing against females in college swimming.
At UPenn, yeah.
Yeah, at UPenn. But there's also a trans man, so someone born female who got top surgery and competes against
Isaac Hennig.
Isaac Hennig
at Yale.
So my issue is it's I mean, obviously the Ukraine thing is a situation of war, life and death.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, anybody who wants to get out and is worried, we should help these people. When it comes to the college swimming thing, my question to the left, which they have no answer for and they just insult me, is, okay, so if you're saying that a trans woman is a woman and then should be allowed to compete in the women's division, because the women's division is a social construct division, right? They say, yes, okay. Well, Isaac is a man, identifying as a trans man. Therefore, they shouldn't be allowed. And they say, but Isaac's not taking testosterone.
Right,
said,
that's the excuse.
So we're talking about biology or society? Pick
they
one.
don't know.
Well, whatever suits
Right.
the argument.
Well, it all flows in one direction. Like, whether it's a trans man or a trans woman, they're both trying to find a way to leave the country. The trans woman says, but I'm a woman, you can't say I'm a man. The trans man says, I'm going to paint my nails and wear women's clothing.
What I don't understand is why is the person who is female but trans as a man, why do they have to do anything? Like, if they're a female, why wouldn't they just go to the border? I mean, because the thing is, if you're a female, right, you can have short hair, and you can, I know this is crazy, but you can wear a suit, you could wear button-down shirts, you could wear men's shoes if you're a female, and it doesn't change anything about being female.
I haven't heard that
You
women
can even
can
keep
be
your
gay.
fingernails
You know what I
super
look like?
short and unpainted, and you still are female.
No, but I think one of the big issues in the culture war is that, whatever our fashion is, we assume too much about the other side's beliefs and understandings of things. I think it's fair to say that they don't think that a woman can have short hair or do these things.
Well, no.
If a young girl says, I want short hair and I want to wear blue jeans, they ask the child is trans.
Right.
They don't. Yeah, they don't say, well, maybe you just like short hair. It's become like if you act. This is the strange thing to me about it. Maybe I should understand that if you have a child who says, a little boy says, I like dolls, then all of a sudden you have conversations about whether the child's trans, but the child doesn't have an understanding of sexuality because they're prepubescent.
Right, and they just like stuff.
Right.
And you
Yeah.
don't even know why they like stuff. Like, maybe they like dolls because they like the color, the texture, you know, or being able to tell stories with dolls.
Stick it in their trucks. I don't know.
Sure, stick it in their trucks, you know, whatever it is. But we don't ask children what it is that they like.
Yeah, but sometimes the joints of the doll are what make the doll cool.
Yeah, they're
It doesn't have
kinda
to do
cool.
with like if it has blonde hair as a girl.
I
or
had one
boy.
where you press the button on the back and she winked at you.
Oh wow.
It was Western Barbie.
Matt Walsh brought this up after the Dr. Phil thing he did. He said if if a little boy or his son came to him and said that he thought it was a girl, he said we'd ask him why. And often you'll hear him say things like, "I want to play with dolls," and he was like, "But boys can play with dolls too."
Sure.
It's funny because hearing Matt talk about stuff like that, that's like that used to be progressive.
That was the original, that was like much the feminist perspective, right? If you're a woman, you can dress and behave however you want. You can dress the way men stereotypically dress. You can behave the way men stereotypically behave. You can do any of that, right? You can sleep around. You can do whatever. It's fine. And now we've switched all that up. We have taken the gender stereotypes and embedded them further.
Yeah, and it seems like the modern progressive left's worldview is that there are social behaviors intrinsic to sex. Isn't
So
it?
bizarre.
Yeah,
It's so bizarre.
I'm just confused. But I gotta be honest.
There was a case discussed on BBC, and a little boy lived with his mum, and she had 2 towels after she had a shower for her hair and her body. And one day he said, "I'd like 2 towels," and she said, "You don't need 2 towels." So he said, "But I'm a girl." And so she went to bed that night and thought deeply about him being a girl. Not that he just wanted 2 damn towels. And then he started on his road to transition at like 7, socially transition.
That is messed up.
It's just so weird.
My son uses like 4 towels. I don't know what he uses them for. I come into the bathroom,
Well,
I'm like,
why-
"You really needed all these towels?"
Why did she say he didn't need towels though? He has hair, right?
I have no idea. This is her very brave journey about discovering that her son was really a girl. And so I
But
think
the
she thought that was a
question
good
is-
thing to say.
I think the question is, what about this child saying that they were a girl is like confirmation. I mean, obviously,
For her,
right. So like, what makes you think from saying I want 2 towels to saying that you're a girl makes the leap to their biology is wrong and they need medication or some kind of surgical treatment, right? I mean, I'm assuming that she went to the doctor, though, right?
for me, if we assume she hasn't got something like Munchausen's by proxy, there is a lot of social status for average people to gain by doing this brave and super wonderful mother. And it is women, unfortunately, it's women that go along with this narrative with their kids. It's not so much dads.
Well, it's
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
like
a
in
feminist
Texas.
fascism, you know, where we have taken the ideas of feminism and we now impose them by force.
Let's go.
I don't think words. I
One
think
half
it's
of the
by
squads
intentional, but
remain.
words have almost no meaning at this point.
That's
What
correct.
does feminism even
That was
mean?
intentional. We were
Yeah.
actually, before we went on tonight, Kelly and I were looking at the definition of gender and gender identity on, Wexlaw, I think at Cornell.
Light ammo here.
And they're the
I've
they're
got
the
sniper ammo
same.
here.
They basically have the
Extended
same
energy mag
definition.
located over
What's what,
here.
gender and
Level
what?
3.
Gender and gender identity are all about like your perceived self and your innate internal self.
Yeah.
Which isn't anything. Like, it's just absurd. We've taken and we gaze in so deeply that we think we see something, and it's not.
I just try to avoid all of that social argument stuff by just saying sex.
Well, that works out.
So I'll say like male and female instead of men and women, and then I'm just like, there you go, fine, whatever.
It still doesn't work with Canadian hate speech laws.
But we're in this really bizarre sort of idea that our bodies are not connected to who we are. I mean, I am my body. If I was taller, I'm sure I'd be slightly different. If I was a lot shorter, I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but if I was a lot shorter, I'd be a completely different person. Of course, if I was a man walking around in the world with A, testosterone, and B, being a man and being treated like a man, there's a there's a transaction between me and the society in which I live, and we both kind of find out what and who I am. It's not just up to me, and it's not just up to them. And it's bizarre that we're deciding that gender is separate from that your internal sense of self is a social construct is the most stupid idea, and it doesn't make any sense.
You know, I was just thinking about someone in prison, maybe how, because people are adaptable and their sense of what I am, like in prison, they're like, what do you even think I am? What are you? Who are you? And then they beat the hell. And like when people are getting like sexually assaulted in prison and like over and over and over and over again by some big guy, and it's a guy, and he's like, I'm not gay, but I have to create a new reality for who I am in this situation, and so they create like a new gender almost to exist within that without being insane. So I understand that people that's happening to people. I think it's honestly, if you zoom out, I think it's happening because like there's so many people on Earth misproportioned in cities, and all these phenolphthalates in the water, and pharmaceuticals like making people androgynous and making people kind of like shaving off.
Conspiracy theory.
I don't know. It just seems logical.
Isn't that true though? That birth control is in public drinking water?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard that
pharmaceuticals go into the toilet
true,
and the
though?
pee when people pee them out after they eat the Prozac, and then that gets in the water supply. People are all really, really messed up, and it might just be a process of the human race kind of shedding its skin.
Look at that. Yeah, it's a.
That's a fact. Yep.
So we got the story from Insider. Birth control pills
That
could
is
add 10
creepy.
million doses of hormones to our wastewater every day. Some of that estrogen may wind up in our taps. Yeah, this is a story I heard about a while back. Hormones from birth control pills can travel through showers, toilets, and washing machines to local wastewater facilities. In his book, Troubled Water, activist Seth Siegel writes that birth control pills add more than 10 million doses of synthetic estrogen to U.S. wastewater every day. From there, the hormones could get discharged into rivers and lakes that serve as sources of drinking water. Only a tiny portion of the estrogen in wastewater makes its way to U.S. taps, but Siegel still thinks we should remove it. So I think maybe it's a bit exaggerated, as if you're like turning the tap water on and there's going to be birth control in it. It looks like it could be an issue.
We all also aren't we having a fertility crisis?
What is that
Yeah.
all about?
Like we just aren't having enough kids.
Does it mean that people aren't trying enough, or that it's people
There's a
aren't
lot
getting...
of trying, and there's a lot of not having children.
Is
Like
that because they're late? Too late?
what? There's that. There's like being older, and then there's being older is one of the things, but there's also been issues of fertility. Like
There's so
I don't
much
have enough
junk
information.
in the food supply.
Yeah.
High fructose corn syrup, aspartame. We have birth control. You have how many oxycodone? How many of these pharmaceuticals that are legal are getting pissed into the water supply?
Kind of crazy.
What are your guys' thoughts on birth control?
I have lots of thoughts on birth control. You want to hear them?
Yeah.
So I went on birth control when I was 16. My doctor said that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome and that I should go on birth control to regulate my cycle. So I did. I did go on birth control. And then I was on it for a very long time. I was on it until I was 32. 32, 33, something like that. And then I went off it because I wanted to have a child. And I had, for that whole period of time, I thought I was depressed. I thought I was maladjusted. I thought I was awkward. I thought I like was socially weird. I thought all of these things about myself, that I was like morose, miserable. And then I went off birth control, and it literally felt like a dam broke in my entire body and in my brain also, where it was like suddenly I could see everything in color, and I just felt like an entirely different person. And I suddenly really was more outgoing. I liked being around people more. I wasn't really depressed. I mean, I was still miserable because I'm still me, but I wasn't like depressed about everything. It was shocking. It was so shocking that I had to go back on it within a month, and I had to like wait a little bit to go off it. Yeah.
Well, there's.
And then it turned out that I didn't have polycystic ovarian syndrome. I wasn't infertile. There was no reason for me to be infertile. And I had such a for a while I was on this pill where if I went into the sun I was
Well,
right, and I was in LA. I was like, this is not working. I do not.
There's two big issues. One is feminist view that birth control has empowered women because now they're free to function, without fear of pregnancy, which could push people back or whatever. But then there's also the fact that our society is mass medicating women.
That's correct.
I'm wondering, have we tracked for the psychological impacts of mass medicating young women?
Well, I've gone through, I've done a little study of other, essentially upper middle class girls in my age group. All of us were put on birth control when we were about 16. Like, every one of us. And I was like, did you have a reason? Well, my doctor said my periods were weird. And the reason that they say stuff, they give you a reason, is so that your insurance covers it. So my insurance covered it for the entire time.
The doctor just wanted you on it? Or?
Yeah, the doctors want 16-year-old upper middle class girls in the U.S. on birth control so that they don't have teen pregnancies.
We need to go. Plane's moving.
I mean, I guess teen pregnancy is a bad thing,
but like, you know, that's it. Now I sound crazy, but in looking at like all of the women I know of that age, it's very like this has happened to all of us.
Birth control makes it harder to have kids, and they're peeing it into the water supply, and it's harder for people to have kids. Gung gung. What?
Have you heard of the mouse utopia experiment?
Talk about it all the time.
It's just, well, when they give mice a lovely place to live and enough bedding and enough food and enough everything, and eventually the mice go a bit crazy and turn on each other and stop having sex. And
that's like America.
Well,
you just wonder if you...
we do talk about the utopia experiment quite a bit. I think he did it. The guy did it with mice and rats, one or the other, and finite amount of space, but unlimited food and water, and this is what they do. And they would have what's called behavioral sync, where their rat side would break down. I was thinking about that because we're effectively running a chicken utopia experiment, and I'm half kidding, but we launched a YouTube show called Chicken City, which is just live streaming chickens, where they have a large amount of space, unlimited food and water, and like we have no intention of like harvesting the chickens. I'm wondering if we'll see something break down, or if chickens will just not be like they're different, different species or whatever's different from mammals.
Do they have a limited space?
They do. Yeah, it's big though. Big.
Right.
But the rats and the mice had limited space, but it was a decent amount. What was interesting is that in those experiments, they would all cluster in one bunch in one area and not utilize the full space they were given. So
I just wonder if we lack purpose. I just look at, if my kids ever talk about millionaires, sort of Kardashian-style millionaires, and I'm like, yeah, but
are they
what
billionaires?
do they...
They're billionaires, right?
Well, billionaires. Millionaires, billionaires, just a lot more than me. But I sort of look at them and I think, what's the purpose of their day? Like, what are they striving for? And do we as human beings need something to strive for? Because if we've got nothing to aim for, to go for, to move forward for, then don't you just stay still and then just become unhappy?
Yes. So I had a friend who became a millionaire when he was like 16. And
you are the Apex champions.
Right.
Because all of a sudden, it's not just the fact that he was rich and could buy anything he wanted. It was that all of a sudden he was like the lord of everyone.
Right.
The way people treated him. He no longer had like teachers who would tell him he was wrong. All of a sudden it was like, hey, let me get that for you. Oh, you're so smart. Wow, look what you've done. And he said that, it happens to all of these guys in tech who become millionaires rather quickly because they like write a code, write a program, and then overnight it sells, and then now they're worth $3 million, and they're sitting at this massive bank account thinking, what do I do now? Like, you wrote the code, you wrote the program, you solved the problem, and now you're rich. But they never did this